Madeline, welcome back to the Empowered Author Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We are this is episode 5 in our 6-episode series on author branding. Mm-hmm. So much to talk about.
Yes, so much covered already and so much more to go.
I know. It's just continued proof that when you talk about different aspects of marketing, there's so much more than what you see on the front surface.
Yeah, there's a lot of thought and strategy put into absolutely everything.
And when you lead with strategy, good things happen. Mm-hmm. We were actually talking about this before we started recording about just how pivotal and critical starting with strategy is. And we discussed the analogy of building a house. I love that. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. So your brand, your strategy, your brand story, that is the foundation to your marketing and your anything that you would need visually designed. Your brand is the very first place that you start. So it's like building a house. So you wouldn't start building a house from the roof, because that's just not going to work. That's not how you build a house. You have to start with the foundation, and everything is kind of built up from the brand that is the foundation of your house.
You can try to start with the roof.
I mean,
it
wouldn't go very well. You'd probably just end up with like a teepee, and then how would you build under that?
And then all you need here in the Ohio Valley is some heavy winds to come, and then it's gone.
It's all gone. Your brand is no more.
No. When you shared that analogy, it hit home, because my husband and I built this house that we live in 2 years ago, and I remember when the foundation was poured. I remember when they put up the supporting beams, and I remember when they were building the framework and all of that stuff. And yet, to the general public, to you who's here at my home studio recording the podcast with me, all you see are the walls and the paint and the brick and the decorations. But there was so much that went into making the house structure proof, like really strong. And same thing with a brand and a business. There's so much that goes into making sure that a business, for an authorpreneur or a brick and mortar store and anywhere in between, there's so much that is required to make sure that is sturdy and strong and consistent. And it all goes back to that foundation. That whole thing I talk about, I don't believe in movement without strategy. And I believe in that in regards to when you bring your brand to life and turn it into something on the outside for people to see. And that happens to be what our episode is all about today. How do we take this brand that you've created and use it to its fullest and allow it to work for you? Y'all, seriously, there's only so many hours in the day. And you can't control everything that everybody thinks and feels and believes. But goodness knows, if you have a strong brand, it can do some of that for you.
Yeah, so the brand is kind of the first step. And like Stephanie said, now that you have it, it's time to kind of put it out in the world and let it speak for you and let it work for you, and get people to look at it and feel what we want them to feel.
It does. So much goes into the creation of a brand. If you aren't familiar with what goes into the creation of a brand, you need to listen to episodes 1 through 4 in this episode, or in this season of the Empowered Author Podcast, because there's a ton that goes into it. However, if you don't use your brand effectively, it can fall flat. I'm just gonna put that out there, Madeline. It can fall flat if you don't use it for its benefit. It can fall flat. No one creates a brand and a logo to just sit there and look pretty. You really want to put it to work, and you want to put it to work for you. And that's actually most cost effective when you do that, because you're not spinning your wheels creating things that don't align with your brand. Everything you do should have brand integrity and brand connection. And taking that brand and bringing it to life requires you to bring your brand and translate it from the intangible to the tangible, then to the visual. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Am I saying that right? So what does all that mean? What does it entail to take a brand, which we've talked about, the strategy around that, to then create a logo and a color palette and fonts and feelings and emotions? And then that next step is to translate it to the visual.
Yeah.
What does that entail?
So so that process, you have the brand strategy, and then that usually goes into the logo creation and your fonts and your colors. That is going to be part of your brand's visual identity. It's like the language of your brand. That's like how you speak to your audience. So you definitely want to stay very true to that because, like we said, you don't want to put all this work into creating this brand and then not have it be recognizable because you're not staying true to that brand. You know, you want to be unapologetically you. You want to be your brand. And you want to stick to that and be consistent with that. You know, no matter where you put your brand, you want to use that visual language. So you want to use the same colors, the same fonts, the same logo, or you know, the same logo variations that may depend on where you're putting your brand. But so pretty much everywhere, any platform, any sort of printed material, you want your brand to be very consistent and maintain that visual identity.
So when you say a visual language, it reminds me of a story, a little, sorry for the stories about me, Madeline, but it just helps me think through different things in life. And it takes me back to when I was in college. So I always had this lifelong goal to graduate college, spend a few years out working in the field, getting some real world, real life experience, and then going back to get my master's and my doctorate. I was going to be a college professor. And I laugh at that now as a mom of 3 kids. That ain't gonna happen. But that's okay. I inspire and empower people in a whole different way now that I could have ever dreamed of. But I bring all of that up because when I was in college, I already knew what my thesis would be for my doctoral, finishing up my doctorate, and I was going to do it around nonverbal communication. So I've always been very interested in different languages, but I was specifically interested in the language for people who were unable to communicate using words in the spoken form. So I learned sign language at a young age, very minimally, but one day I will go back and be an interpreter at church or something really cool because I have interest in that. But I've always really been fascinated by, when I kind of narrow it down and realize why I did this, fascinated by how do we communicate before we ever speak? What does that do? And actually, there's studies that note that at least 70% of communication is nonverbal. So that is why in this post-COVID world where we do a lot of Zoom calls and emails, that sometimes we're missing some of the basis of communication because things that happen have so much more to do than just what we speak. It's how you feel. It's how what your nonverbals are telling about it. So when I was thinking about that in relation to the story that you just shared, the information you just shared, and I can align that kind of with a brand and this visual language that you talk about, you can really actually kind of apply the same concept to it. So you got the brand and its a logo, and that speaks just a little bit. It tells so much, right? It's all jam-packed with all of that information that you share. But the visual language of the brand is where the value comes in my opinion. So you've got this brand, and now you're visually allowing it to speak to life things. That is where you're bringing it to life. So, the fonts, the icons, the graphic elements help do that. The colors help do that. And you really want to continue that brand identity into everything you do because consistency is key. That is how your brand works for you, because people then look and go, just like what we've talked about before, I know when I'm going to go get a Lush bath bomb, I know what I'm going to get.
Yes.
Because I know that brand, and they doesn't have to even speak without me knowing, and I know something about it.
Yeah, something, using that analogy of language, if you're speaking English and then you switch into Spanish, you can't be certain that people are going to understand that.
Right.
So if you stay with the brand language, all those visual elements, then people are going to understand, and they're going to know what to expect, and then that's going to increase your brand recognition.
Yes, it will increase your brand recognition and your brand awareness, and I think at the end of the day, that's what we hope that a brand will do for you. So brand awareness, just to clarify what that really is for people, it's important to brand awareness is important not only to help your business succeed, but it's also important to help you maintain momentum. So the result of brand awareness is the brand recognition and the brand recall. So when we talk about brand recognition, what I'm talking about is you really want to achieve this, you want consistency on all platforms. I feel like I've already said this 5 times, so I'm going to say it again. Consistency is key. Please don't have your social media have a whole different vibe than your website, than your PowerPoint deck, than the words that you speak at your conference, than the background, the back matter of your book, right? Like it all needs to have consistency. You want people to see your brand and instantly go, yes, that's that person. And I know what you stand for. And I know how you're helping people and you're helping me. Like that's the brand recall. Like at a snap of a finger, they know. Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. I look at Color Today Pretty, which happens to be Stephanie's book, and I know she's going to give me inspiration. Done. I know I'm going to be filled up. Done. I'm not looking for Stephanie to give me mathematical equations. Nope, that's not happening. Mm-hmm. Stephanie may have wanted to be a math teacher, but Stephanie needs a calculator. You're not going to get that out of the book, okay? Mm-hmm. And the reality is if you have done what we've been doing and talking about with building your author brand, you've already invested in your brand. So let it work for you. Let it allow you to use your money in the right ways. Don't go and recreate the wheel. Why would you do that? You've already got your brand. A lot of people do that, don't they?
Yeah.
I see that. That's where this inconsistency comes in. Mm-hmm. I was recently doing a VIP day with an author. And just for those who are listening, a VIP day is a 5-hour intensive, either virtually or in person, where we sit down and we really hash through kind of as your marketing coach what you need to help bring your book and your authorpreneur journey to life. And we were talking about her speaking engagements, and she was saying, I've got like all these different ideas. And I kept going back to, what's your message? Mm-hmm. No, you don't need all of those. What's the one thing that you need? And you can build upon that. I said, let's work smarter, not harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something I know you've said before is so focused energy. It's less time wasted, less resources wasted, and you'll have better results because you're doing what your target audience wants and what they will respond to because of the strategy behind that brand.
Yes, and when you have a brand, you have a guideline.
Yeah.
So you don't have to go looking and trying to recreate it. You know where to start. Mm-hmm. So I have to, I think I want to pause and I want to share a story that you and I talked about just before we got going. And it was actually talking about, some people that we see that go and get excited about creating stuff before they reflect on the strategy. Mm-hmm. And I love how you said that when you were in your educational background learning how to really be strong and effective in this field, you were taught, don't open Illustrator or a Word doc or any form of, or don't get a piece of paper, nothing until you do what?
Until you brainstorm and think about what you're doing, why you're doing it, what the end goal is. Because, I know you say before, there should be no movement without strategy. So strategy is really the key behind everything before you start putting things together visually. You have to know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and then, what the end goal is.
Yeah, so I love when you were like, when I start a brand, to build out a brand, I don't even pull up my creative software.
I've done it before. I used to, when you get advice, you're like, I know better than them. I know better.
We all know better than the experts.
You don't know better.
No, you don't.
No, so I've done it before, and just throwing things together without any sort of thought or planning beforehand, it never goes well. It's like trying to put together a piece of furniture before you have read the instructions.
You can't see my face right now, but my husband's really good at that. And I'll come in at the 11th hour and be like, hey, why do we have this extra piece? Because you didn't read the instructions. Exactly.
Yeah, the results are never going to be as good as they would be the first time if you had some thought and planning behind what you were going to do.
I also think that when you focus on strategy first, then what you do is you walk into this field of all of the potential and you are focused on what you're doing and you don't get overwhelmed by the potential. I think from a marketing standpoint, in today's world, there are so many things you can do. Mm-hmm. So many. Mm-hmm. Don't get inundated by that. Focus on your strategy, your goals, your target audience, and how all of that aligns. Mm-hmm. Then that will dictate what social media platforms should you be on. Yeah. How do you translate what you're doing? What's your messaging? Where do you need to be I know some people who don't even need to be on social media, right? Like, where should you spend your energy? All of that is dictated when you start with the strategy first, and the same true with brand.
Yeah, so staring at a blank document, there's just endless opportunities. But when you have that brand, you have guidelines, you have direction, you have somewhere you're needing to go, and here's how to get there. Yeah. And that, is just essential for your brand.
It is so important, and it keeps you focused. Absolutely. So we say all of this, and I say, okay, well, when you have your strategy, then you're more focused. But there are a suite of materials that we feel like that most authors and authorpreneurs need. So once you've created your brand, once you've brought your brand to life, now you can touch it and see it and smell it sometimes. I'll have to tell you one time about how I actually created a candle that smells like my book. Remind me to give you a little sniff of that. But after you've done all of that, then then what marketing tools do you need? And so, I'm a big believer that you need to have a digital presence. Now, I know I just said that you don't have to be on social. You don't have to if it's not the right platform for you. But the digital presence is a validating tool nowadays. Let's be real. What's the last time that you've wanted to go purchase something that you haven't gone online to make sure the company's legit? Right? Never. My mom did that over Christmas with Facebook ads and went and bought something and spent way too much, only to find out that the company wasn't legit or based in our area, and she never got her product. Nobody does that anymore. You have to go online and check. And whether that is with a website or a social media page or something, you need a digital presence. So a brand can translate beautifully into websites. Actually, that's one of the first places that people will go to look for stuff. And that's one of the first places that I suggest, especially authors who are wanting to build more than just a single book development. And quite frankly, even if they just have one book, I'm like, do you want to speak on your book? You need to be able to have a place that people can go and learn what you need to do. It will help ensure your legitimacy, and it will confirm your quality. Plus, it will bring to life your brand, and it will let them know, the people that you want to work with, what they're going to get out of the deal.
Yeah, we definitely live in a super digital world. And I know for me, definitely anytime I hear, like a name or like a product or a brand that I've just kind of it's been in my ear, and I've been thinking, maybe I should check that out. I mean, everyone just goes to Google and there's a search, and if it comes up, then they'll look more into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have to do that. I mean, that is important.
Yeah, and it's also kind of crucial that they hear the information from you, because then you can shape and guide, what you want them to hear, what's most important first, rather than, if you don't have something specific that pops up first, they might, read something else that maybe doesn't have to do with you or isn't, curated by your brand specifically.
That is a really good takeaway. Shape your own story before somebody else shapes yours. And I think that also goes into today's world. People are expecting engagement as well, and that's where social comes in. So I don't believe that every author should be on every social platform. In fact, I might go against what most marketers believe. I think it's smart to pick one or two social media platforms and be really good at it. Be really good at it. Be very visible before you ever consider any others. But those one or two should really speak to where your target audience lives. And in our connected world that likes engagement today, social media is the place for that. So you can really use your brand as a way to be integrated into, an entire website design, as well as your social media header, graphics, social graphic templates, and even be dictating your messaging that goes along with it. So I think that your brand's pivotal on your digital presence, for sure. And then I also think that your brand is important in a relational level. So I talk a lot with my clients about how it's more important to have a relational experience than a transactional experience. If you try to be transactional, people are just going to see you as a one-off. They might buy from you today, but what happens when you have another product or another offering or a collaboration or whatever? What if you have something bigger later? If you are transactional, it's kind of a one and done, and people feel that. Whereas if it's relational, there's more layers to it. And that's why I think that, it's really important that you have marketing tools that help you in the relational side of marketing. So the good old fashioned thank you cards, those are big. Business cards help in that relational component, even a digital or a video business card that can be all just on the digital side. Those are really important in this relational experience.
Yeah, something else too would be like, I see a lot of people have like their email signatures. They have a little bar that, has their branding, and it's very, it is relational, when you send someone an email.
Absolutely. And I've had many people tell me, Stephanie, I went and bought your book because I saw information about your book in your email signature. I never even had to sell a book. It was just there. Again, my brand and the marketing is working for me, not against me. But I also do think you need sales tools too. There will be times that you will need to be doing stuff in a more sales way, and I think it really ups your professional game. So how do you advertise yourself? That's important to consider as you start to think about what materials you might need to kind of go along with it. Is it word of mouth? If so, you're going to need that business card. Are you going to get up on the stage? If so, you need a PowerPoint deck or a speaker kit to help you ever get on the stage. And are you going to be selling yourself online? Well, then that digital presence is pivotal. So really understanding your goals and making strategic marketing movement to support them is so important when you're talking about how do you take your brand and move it over into the marketing material space.
Yeah, and that part of that, figuring out which of those maybe are kind of your best bet or what's going to be best for your brand is in that initial, strategy about who your target audience is, kind of figuring out where they are and the best way to target them and reach them in a way that's going to be most relevant and like accessible to them.
I think if someone is not comfortable in marketing in general, they might have analyzation paralysis, where literally they will just stop and do nothing because they're in overwhelm. And if you are in overwhelm, you might be missing a lot of opportunities. So where do you begin? I say, it's a great question. It can be very overwhelming, but just like what you said, knowing your strategy first is going to help dictate that. So right before my book came out, I had a moment, like literally like a mental breakdown. It's exhausting writing a book, and it's really overwhelming writing a book and sharing your areas of vulnerability with the world. That is very overwhelming. But I had somebody, it was my book coach and my publisher, share with me that it was a really interesting analogy I'll share here. It says, your book is not a banana. Have I told you this story yet?
Yes.
Yeah. So they said, your book is not a banana. And what does that mean? Well, I love bananas, and we'll get a whole little pile of bananas, and before you know it, they ripen and draw all those disgusting gnats and turn black before I can eat them all sometimes, right? Well, your book, your business, your message is not going to ripen in 3 days and go bad. It's not going to draw gnats, none of that. Your book has extended life. Your message has extended life. So I'm a big believer in take your time to do it right. It's much better to do it right than to make some decisions that later you have to go back and rectify. So really consider how you want to reach people and how your audience best responds to you. And that's where you start.
Yeah. Being intentional, maybe just trying 2 or 3 things, it'll allow you to put more time and more energy into those things. And it'll be better than if you're trying to split all your time and energy into like 6, 7 different avenues.
Well, you also just said something about energy that I think is really important. I'm a big believer, so I just took a drink of my water. So I'll use this as an analogy. I talk about this on the stage a lot. On a Monday, you get a full bottle of water of energy, right? Like, so think of it that way. By the end of the week, like, your energy's run out. Well, you might work extra hard Monday and Tuesday, and you think, well, now I have more energy. Well, no, then you're tired on Thursday instead of Friday. So you really only have so much energy in a day that you can give. Think about that same thing with your brand and with the energy and the marketing efforts that you correlate with your brand. Where are you going to put your energy in, and make sure you only do it in places that you're going to get energy out of. I see a lot of people, and myself included sometimes, where I'll spend a lot of energy on social media marketing. And I spend energy on it because I have a lot of fun with it. But then I step back and go, is that really where my people are? Yes and no. So do I really need to do it at the level that I'm doing? Yes and no. And recontemplate that and pivot, because that takes a lot of energy. But you might have an area that you could get so many more, make such a larger impact over here that you didn't think of, that would be more effective for you to put your energy in. And in regards to marketing materials and how you use your brand, creating a PowerPoint template deck may have been all I needed, right, to get there.
Yeah. And maybe it would also help to think, if you're kind of panicky and being like, oh, I can't miss out on these areas, well, they'll still be there. Like you said, your book's not a banana. If, if the strategy that you're using isn't, it's not working for your brand, you can always try something different.
Absolutely. So, Madeline, you and I came together and put our heads together, and we thought, all right, for authors and authorpreneurs out there who are wanting to build an author brand, what do they need? Sometimes it's overwhelming because there's so many things. Where do I start? Well, definitely start with the strategy. But I think that there's like a suite of basic things that people will need. And we've actually come up with a couple of packages that if you are interested, that you can visit our website and learn more about. But it kind of breaks down to, again, what are you trying to do? And how can we help you? And I think that's a great place for people to also start when they're like, I don't know where to begin. If you feel that way, my recommendation is this. Don't start anywhere, but find people that you trust who can help you figure out how to navigate it.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Yep, go team. The two of us, we're here. We're here to help you. Great discussion today. I get very excited seeing the tangibles of what a brand brings and how we can help make that and turn that into life.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between, having this intangible brand and then, you can see the visual of it, but once you have it really out in the world, you can see, wow, we created this thing and now people can see it. Now it's going to be making a difference. And I think that's kind of like the rush that I get from designing these
That's the fun part.
Yeah.
That's the fun part. And then you see the joy on their faces when they start reaching those people. Yeah. Such a fun episode, as all the other ones have been. We have one more episode to go, and that is probably the one that people thought we would have started with. And that is, how does the author brand and the book brand coexist, intermingle, are independent, and everywhere in between? So stay tuned and join us on the 6th episode of Season 2 of the emPowered Author Podcast, where we will dive into all things author brand, book brands.